All right, welcome to Political Voice. I'm Moses Humphrey. Nigerians have their eyes firmly set on what the outcome of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal might be. Now, barring any unforeseen circumstances, the tribunal is expected to deliver its judgment sometime in September. We'll have a word with any party member and you wonder whether all could emerge victorious at the same time. That's definitely impossible. Now, there will be winners and definitely there will certainly be losers. In their last written addresses, the parties stated in clear terms how they summed up the journey so far from its purely electoral stage before it became a purely judicial matter. The International Crisis Group in a May 2023 report posited, and I quote, "The Electoral Commission's failure to collate ballots transparently and questions about Tinubu's eligibility for the topmost have prompted legal challenges to the results." End of quote. But as Nigerians go through the throes of a devastating economy that has taken an incapacitating toll on them, many are looking to the outcome of the elections petitions for a reset. Well, we certainly cannot preempt a matter still before the courts, but there is a need to restate the need for substantive justice in place of a bizarre importation of technicalities by which judgments are often delivered in Nigeria. My guests this morning are Tochukwu Ezokama, an author and a social affairs commentator, and I also do have a VOP in-house analyst, Cyril Abaku, also a public affairs commentator with me in the studio. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, let's start with you. How do you sum up everything that has happened at the tribunal so far?
Let me start by saying that, tribunal, because people were disenchanted, disagreed with the outcome of the election, and which is wonderful, being responsible about the way of registering their protest. They didn't want their supporters to go out on the street and cause chaos. So they went to court, and that's the legitimate thing to do. The court is the ultimate arbiter, not because they are superhuman, not because they are all-knowing, not because they are infallible, but just because they are the ultimate arbiter. We have confidence in the court. Like I used to say time and time again, that in any country with any hope, there are three bastions of incorruptibility in any country with any hope of survival, and that's the church, the universities, and the judiciary. In Nigeria, the church and the universities have faltered in that respect.
The church being the religious organization.
As a body, yes.
The church and the mosques.
I don't know much about imams and the mosques, so I limit it to what I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but in this context, the church means religious organizations. Okay. Period. But I'm a Christian and I go to church. I interact with pastors. I've assisted pastors before, been very close to them. I've worked as an assistant pastor, I've worked as a pastor, so I can talk about the church with authority. But in Nigeria, the church and the universities have faltered. They have faltered in that respect of being a bastion of incorruptibility. So we have only one bastion of incorruptibility left, and that's the judiciary. So we hope the judiciary will do a good job, do the right thing. So the process is going as expected. It's all in line with the rule of law. It's all as stipulated by the Constitution. But ultimately, it's for the judges to decide. As for the election, judging, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a learned gentleman, but from my layman's gumption, I know the election was not credible. The election was marred by fraud, violence, and all that shouldn't have attended a credible election. So, but the judges, we have faith in them. Hopefully, they will do the right thing.
All right, Cyril, let's get your views so far.
Yeah, well, so essentially, I think that the factors that determined the eventual process and outcome of the elections this year didn't fall entirely within the purview of what the courts, the tribunals could address. So, for example, in the build-up to the elections, we had the exchange of fiery rhetoric. For example, when we had people saying, if you're from so and so part of the country, you can't cast a vote in this place. You can't go back to your village, go back to your whatever it was, and stuff like that. I'm not sure that those matters are in any court of competent jurisdiction. Voter intimidation, hate speech, so much so that when somebody said people shouldn't come out and vote, it was the police spokesman that came and did the image making for for the people who issued that threat. And sadly so. So to that extent, there is a reasonable consideration for how do we look at those issues? How do we even come into beginning to say the real factors that made people perhaps not to vote or not to vote, we are not even addressed before election day. But as for everything that happened from election morning down to maybe this present time, are the things that now fall within the purview of this conversation, because our focus is how substantive justice can be served as an outcome of the tribunal process. We had the APC was the defendant in the APC and INEC, in the manner of speaking, are the defendants, while the PDP, the Labour Party, and the APM are the complainants, are the ones who went to court to say, look, we took part in this process, but we do not think that the outcome justified the process itself. There are irregularities, there are question marks, there are things that we feel require redress. And so they're asking the court to say, look, you need to take a second look at what the outcome has been in terms of what we put in terms of what even foreign observers and foreign partners put into the process. It's like farming. You can determine what should come out when based on what you've put in. So this is really where we are. Now, on the question of the fundamental particulars of the suit as they are before the court, we cannot speak on the matter that is sub judice. It's yes, sure, but we can skirt around it. We can look at certain issues. There must be fairness, there must be objectivity, there must be, like they say, justice must be done and be seen to be done. It was Justice Oputa who said, I can't pick the case now. He said, we are not final because we're infallible, but we are infallible because we're final. That is a loaded statement. It goes to tell you that whether the courts are right or wrong, what they say, what a judge says, even in a drunken state, carries the full weight and backing of the power of the state and of law. And that's why sometimes people even, just to say this, people even ask sometimes, is it a court of justice or a court of law? We could have come to a court of justice, but it is up to, we could have come to a court of law. It is up to the judges to now make us believe that indeed this wasn't just a court of law, but also a court that was capable of doing justice. So there is a need for Nigerians to be able to come to terms with what is the outcome of the judgment. Not, that is to say, the judgment must carry justice.
Whatever the outcome
yes, the outcome is. The judgment must carry justice. If it fails to carry justice, it will be a mere document. And the more people lack faith in our judiciary, the worse off we are for it. But for what it is worth, it is important to state that the judiciary is on trial. Like Ken Saruba said many years ago, when the Nigerian state was about to hang him, he said, he told Justice Idris out, I think, he said, my Lord, we all stand before history. I and my colleagues are not the only ones on trial. So even the judges themselves,
we're also on trial.
Everybody's on trial. And so it is either we will do what we have to do that's been our power to do now and come out on the right side of it later, or if we did what even our own conscience is at conflict with, and much later we become, we now bear the brunt. I think that Nigerians today are watching, the youth are watching. Posterity is also going to look back at what's happening now and give its own verdict. So it's a whole gamut. I mean, it's a big thing, come September.
Now let me come back to you now. Let's from what we have perceived so far, from reactions of Nigerians initially, when this case was to start at the presidential election petitions court, there was a talk about it being broadcast live. Now that was dumped at the end of the day, but Nigerians still had access to some of the proceedings as put up by certain individuals who were privy to be in the courtroom, as published on social media. So some Nigerians have been able to follow the process and follow some analysis as published on social media. Now, from what you have seen, interactions on social media, and how would you rate the expectation of Nigerians going forward, whichever way this judgment swings? How would you rate the expectations of Nigerians as it concerns future elections?
Well, expectations of Nigerians, and Cyril talked about not just justice being served, but also seeming to have been served.
Yes.
There are two factors. So in the case of Nigeria, Nigerians were repulsed by the way things panned out on the election day. Nigerians in their minds believe that they know the winner of this election, irrespective of what is happening. And there's preponderant evidence on the part of the plaintiffs in this case that things were not done right and that it should be overturned. So the expectation of most Nigerians is that this election should be annulled, or there should be a rerun. That's what the man on the street is expecting. But then the judges talk about basing their judgment on evidence. We pass judgment based on the evidence presented before us. As much as we reference the judiciary and as much as we take their word for what they say, we know that sometimes judges don't do that. They cannot do that because some judicial verdicts can have profound consequences, can have ripple effects that may be almost hard to contain, can be disruptive. And you talked about whether it's an issue of law or issue of justice.
Yes.
So the question is that the word justice, like love, lacks a precise definition. A man that cuddles the wife, the children, provide for them is all in law. It's all acts of love. A man that pulls up a gun, goes to war to kill people, is also in love for his country. So violence can be an expression of love. Kissing, hugging, caring can also be an expression of love. So those are terms that are very, very hard to define. Okay? So the thing with justice is that justice can be miscarried, and it's all justice. Justice can be upheld, and it's all justice, depending on insinuating circumstances.
Yes.
So we leave it to the judges. I'm not in a position. We leave it to the judges to handle. But as for the expectation of Nigerians, Nigerians expect things to be done right. Nigerians expect justice not only to be done, but to be visibly done. But let the judges decide. But in making that decision, they should be extremely careful, because the Nigerians have been, the average Nigerian is very unhappy with the system, with the evil oligarchy, the evil cabal that has strangulated this country for so long. People are angry, people are disenchanted, people want a change. And in this last election, they voted for that change. It's the same oligarchy, the same evil cabal that truncated or stunted the change.
All right, Cyril, now. Tochukwu talked about the possibility of a rerun. Now, assuming we are not preempting the court now, but assuming there is a rerun to the elections, how would you gauge voter engagement for a rerun? Do you think Nigerians will be willing to come out en masse like they did initially during the elections to cast their votes in hope that it will count?
A rerun at this time will definitely alter the balance of power in a very, very significant way. Why I say this is because the circumstances that led to the elections are very different from what they are now. The social milieu we find ourselves in. You remember that, I mean, for people who are keen watchers of what has been going on in this country, there was an attempt by some actors within the political space to sort of create the similitude of suffering, of privation, of crisis, of a nation in tailspin virtually. You know, there was the cash crunch, there was the lack of petrol, there was power outages, there were all sorts of things, which back then prompted then governor of Kaduna State to issue a state address, which was more or less a national address, stating that those were the shenanigans of persons who were attempting to prevent a Bola Tinubu presidency, that they wanted to use it as a pretext to stage a coup d'etat in the country, and to so that the person they didn't want to win the election wouldn't win the election, which means that hardships, social distress, sufferings are factors that can determine how people perceive a government, how people engage a government, how people come to interact with a government. And if the crisis preceding the elections were artificial, where basically maybe you could put it to say it was a Emefiele's policy to introduce the Naira redesign, which led to the cash crunch and so on. Today, we are in a worse state, occasioned by the removal of petrol subsidy, occasioned by skyrocketing inflation, occasioned by job losses, occasioned by hardship across the land. Only this week, we saw that the labor unions had to come out and begin a strike beginning August 1. It entered August, so I think it was only yesterday that they called it off. International companies, I won't mention names, there's a global British multinational drug manufacturer that is not leaving the country. So with the way things are, the unions are not, the resident doctors are on strike. ASU is about to go on strike. NLC was on strike the other day. At College of Education, teachers are now working only twice a week. There's a pending VAT on diesel. There's a pending VAT on market women. So when you put all of this together, I want to imagine that if they assuming without conceding that the tribunal judges today came up to say, you know what, you guys go for a rerun, I think that it doesn't put the government in a very good place, and it could be likely if we began to invent reasons why subsidy had to come back, if we had to find reasons why price of things began to crash. But whether that is really going to happen every student of politics, some people come to politics from the pragmatic school, some come to it from the realist school, some come to it from the idealist school. But I think that Nigerian politics is way too verges too much on brinkmanship to consider it from the idealist and even realist schools. Nigerian politics is purely brigandage, purely Machiavellian. In fact, to borrow the words of the communists of the Soviet, what we're practicing in Nigeria is called realpolitik. It's not politics. It's politics of the crassest, because you never know what comes next. You never know what comes next. Do you know we live in a country where government ambushes people, where government ambushes its own citizens with policies and things like that? We had the first issue of the rise in the price of petrol. Labour said, let us have a discussion to raise minimum wage. While that was going on, Later on, the labor union said that they couldn't even sit with government to have the discussion. Suddenly, government went again in the course of the discussion and raised the price of petrol again. In fact, from postulations, I mean, you can feel the market. People are saying that fuel may go up to as much as 8,500 naira per liter. So, how do you expect that people are going to respond to saying, continue with this policy? We are happy and we buy into it. I want to think that only very few will be able to endorse it. So, to that extent, I am of the view that were that to even be the case, all right, there is going to be a groundswell of volte-face. You are going to witness that. You know, somebody who was saying yes now suddenly say no. In fact, they will say no with a desperation that, but you see, the thing is, it's not about how we interact, it's about the fact that when we go, if at all we are to go to the polls again, allow for the process to be transparent, to be free, to be fair, to be credible, and hopefully INEC wouldn't say that the server had a
glitch.
Avoid deliberate mistakes.
Mistakes.
All right, now let's look at what we have learned so far from this past elections, where a policy was put in place. It was described to be a foolproof ideology to enable voters, encourage voters to vote, knowing that their votes would count. I'm talking about the beavers now.
Yes.
And also the introduction of the IREV. And people believed that, okay, if this is the case, then let me gather my wife and children. Let me call my husband and uncles and aunties. Let's go out and cast our votes, as against what we were used to in the past. And all of a sudden, at the Presidential Petitions Court, we have been told that some of these things really don't matter. The issue of the 25% as regards the FCT has been in contention for a long time. Now, how would you sum up what we, Nigerians, or what would you say we have learned so far?
What we learned, you talked about being foolproof. This will work, and people were excited with the new innovation, the introduction of technology into the voting process, that things are going to work out this time. And Nigerians were enthused too. They came out hoping to change the entrenched order, to bring things, change things around, because we've suffered enough. We've been patient enough. We tolerated so much, stomached the instomachable. But then it goes to corruption. The average Nigerian can be compromised. That's what we learned from this election. So even when you supposedly have everything right, and everything is set to go, and everything supposedly is proof, what did you call it?
Foolproof.
Foolproof, yes. As long as the system remains corrupt, you cannot predict the credibility, the function, the efficiency of anything, or the credibility of any election in Nigeria. Is corruption. Most third world countries are corrupt. Most African countries are corrupt. And Nigeria will remain corrupt for historical reasons.
For historical reasons?
Yes, because you were sitting there in your villages, doing things your own way, being loyal to your kings, fighting your wars, and a foreign power came and imposed a system on you. The system was not deliberately designed to serve you. That's one thing you notice, say, in the US. The system is there to serve you. The system makes you feel important, makes you feel worthy, because the system was built for you. In Nigeria, the system is intimidating and repressive. So once you get into Nigeria, you know that the system was designed to intimidate you.
Just changes automatically.
Repress you, exploit you.
Yeah.
So the white man brought a system we did not know about, a system that we were not a part of. So we were suspicious of this system. The system wasn't nice to, in some ways, the system was nice to, but in other ways, it was not. But overall, we suspected the system. Therefore, going to a white man's job, you're going to work for the oppressor, and you expected to get something from it. In my area, they will say, with all the work he did, all he could bring back was this. Go in there, you expect to steal something. They say, Yoruba, in my area, they still call the civil service, although the white man's job. In Yoruba land, there's a saying that says, only a dim-witted man puts all his mind in a white man's job. So we embrace the white man and his system, but with suspicion, looking for something to get out of it. That's corruption. So you go there to make money, to bring something home. The white man is gone, but the mindset remains.
Yeah.
For that reason, we'll be going to the civil service, corporate service, expecting to steal a little and take back home. So we can get the corruption manageable, reduce it to a tolerable, manageable extent. Then this system can make the next step forward. But until it's done, what we have is piratical depredation of the system, the looting and tearing down of a system as though we are pirates. And if the pirates loot and tear down a system, what do you expect of the system? Collapse.
Yeah, total.
Yeah, complete collapse. So that's where we are with corruption. So until we can get corruption down, lamentably, every government comes talking about it's the resolve to fight corruption. But as the government is living, corruption have jumped quantum. Yeah, it gets worse. So by imperceptible gradations, corruption keeps going higher and higher and higher. The Buhari, that was one of his central promises, electoral promises. I'll fight corruption. And we trusted him because we thought he has this indomitable will of a military commander. We thought he had this incorruptible uprightness of a devout Muslim or a social crusader. But by the time Buhari was leaving, Nigeria became obviously more corrupt. And our Emiloko president talked about renewed hope. And he said he will continue from where Buhari stopped.
No, he didn't mean it that way.
You can't speak for him. I'm talking about what he said. And he's trying to interpret what he said. Do you read minds?
Do you mean the president? Do you mean the president said he will continue the corruption of Buhari?
No, he said I'll continue generally.
Yeah.
The good work.
Yes.
Which good work was that, sir?
You will continue the good work.
Good work. Okay. The thing is that those that are corrupt and benefiting from corruption see nothing wrong with
They won't
corruption.
fight it.
A trader in Onitsha was telling me how good corruption is. Without corruption, nothing will work. You get to the bank and you don't talk to the bank manager and give him some money. How is he going to attend to you? You have to give him something. So corruption opens the door.
Rain in us, as it is.
Yeah.
Corruption has eaten deep into
all that mindset.
Society.
So continuing his good work, what does that mean? To some people, corruption is wonderful.
You know.
So the thing is that where things are, until we get the system sanitized, the system can never be perfect. A fish does not live in clean water, but manageable, tolerably. Reduce corruption to a tolerable, manageable. It's like in Ghana, things can get done in Ghana, although the system is corrupt. Botswana, some corruption, but things can happen. So no matter what we put in place, as long as Nigerians remains compromisable, the average Nigerian, we can't get much done.
All right, then, Cyril, I know you want to chime into a few things that you said. You have the time to do so. But as you do so, I'd like for you to also respond to this. For the first time, we have two parties mounting an equal challenge to the presidential election. Now, how does that weigh in on the history of the 2023 elections?
Well, anything that comes as a first is always something that is worth taking a second look at, is worth re-examination. We never had this close. So, for example, in 1979, we had a case where one party, the UPN, challenged the victory of the NPN at the Supreme Court. And it was clear, really, that the NPN didn't win the elections in Kano and that UPN ought to have won the election, given the way they were interpreting 2/3 of 19 states Richard Akinjide was a lawyer of the federal government, or FEDECO as the case was, while Chief Awolowo, was. So, but out of 7 Supreme Court judges, 6 said Shagari's election should be upheld.
Of course.
Only one, Justice Kayode Esho, said even if everyone should fall, let justice be done. So out of 7, 6 said conservative position. Now, after the judgment had been written, had been handed down, the court said that judgment should not be cited as precedent because it wasn't built on justice or on law. It was built on the social implication of overturning Shagari's election. Oftentimes and down the years, we have seen cases where judges will ignore the substantive issues of law and go and shop for where they can import technicalities into the case and use the grounds of some innocuous, uncanny technicalities to knock off the merits of the substantive matter, if only to give justice to whom they feel it should be given. Several governors have benefited from it. Presidents also have. Council chairmen also have. So the question now is, of course, we also can't preempt what's going to come out of the tribunal, but the fact remains that only two things can happen. It is either the fundamental matter of law is addressed, or on the grounds of some technicality, you may see an outcome that is not particularly in sync with what we will consider to be justice and visible justice. Now, the point to be made again is the fact that Uncle Ezukama said something earlier about people's perception of what has been going on at the tribunal. What the law says is that that court cases should be heard in public, which means that anybody who is an interested party in the case can attend court and see the proceedings. But the court sittings could have been held under a tree, could have been held under a shed. But the fact is that government built courthouses. In fact, what the Constitution said was competent court of law, but I do not know whether the Constitution said law courthouses. It's a competent court of law. So what we even call court is not strictly spelled out under the law, as far as I know. Anyway, I may be wrong. I'm not a lawyer. But when the law says the matter be heard in court, in open court, it means that anybody who wants to access the court premises is free to come and sit down and hear what the issues are. Now, the venue that houses the court is only a matter of technology, a matter of convenience, a matter of accessibility, so that the judge can sit in a place where the lawyers can also, sit in a place where they can be seen, make their case while the public watches on. If the public has the right to see what is going on in open court, I don't see why we cannot put technology. And by the way, let me also say this. The people who come to court to see the case are those who have locus, as it were, some measure of locus. You know what I mean? On that matter. In the case of the Presidential Election Petitions Court, every Nigerian has locus in it. But not all Nigerians can throng the court premises.
Of course.
This is why we should have been given the benefit of technology, the same way we allowed for mortar and brick to put and a roof to give the court a premises where people can sit and watch, to also give Nigerians some sort of to mediatize the matter by allowing us to have that technology over our heads as a roof, so that even if we're not that physical, we can join virtually. But we've already been disenfranchised on that front. All right. So the question now is, when all is said and done, this year's election should have given us the first election in which two parties were able to challenge almost equally the outcome of the election, and it could have also been the first time in our history where we were able to beam the the proceedings live to everybody's living room. But we failed to do that under some guise, and but I mean, it's fine. Perhaps going forward, INEC has said that they are considering whether they should make a move for the law amendment to allow adult staff vote. But I'm wondering, can't we also make a move to say, look, court proceedings can be had. Look, those times have gone when conservative thought, and in South Africa, Oscar Pistorius killed his girlfriend. That matter was heard live it was not just the court proceedings. We watched it on live television, and this is South Africa. I don't see why Nigeria couldn't have also, cashed in on this and said, we have nothing to hide. Everybody can see what's going on.
I think that's
But
the
we failed to do
discretion of the judge. I mean, it's not, in the case of O.J. Simpson and his wife, it was televised. But the judge had to decide. Lance Ito was the judge. He decided as, okay, televise it. But the televising the case was so distracting. The judges went to consult public relations officers, no, not the judges, the lawyers, and even some of the O.J. Simpson and the defendant consult public relations experts on what to wear, how to posture in court.
So that made it distracting.
I think it was.
It became
Perhaps from the way he saw it.
And O.J. Simpson's lawyer, this very popular lawyer, took over the courthouse, the drama, because it was all pre-planned with PRO experts, public relations experts, on what to do. The judge was like forced into a corner. The man was shouting in court, if it does not fit, you must acquit. The drama was just too much.
It became dramatic.
Yes.
Well,
For such a solemn issue as the election petition, I think the televising it wouldn't have been, it wasn't necessary. Okay. Justice can be done and seem to be done without televising the case.
All right, then.
And it's good the judge said no.
Okay. All right, so we'll go on to another topic now. The Niger coup leader has declared that he will not bow down to pressure to reinstate deposed President Mohamed Bazoum, criticizing sanctions imposed by West African leaders as illegal and inhumane, and urging his countrymen to get ready to defend their nation. Well, General Abdurrahman Chiani's comments, issued in a televised address on Wednesday, came as the defense chiefs of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, met in neighboring Nigeria to discuss the crisis in Niger. The regional bloc has imposed severe economic sanctions on Niger and threatened to use force if Bazoum's presidency is not restored by August 6th. Today is August 4th. That's in 2 days' time. Well, it has also dispatched a delegation to Niger, headed by former Nigerian leader Abdulsalami Abubakar, to negotiate with the soldiers who seized power. Chiani says he will not change his mind. Now, the self-declared leader said the military had rejected the sanctions altogether and refused to give in to any threats wherever they come from. Now, he said they amounted to an interference in the internal affairs of his country. Chiani, who was commander of Niger's presidential guard, went on to warn of difficult times ahead and said that the hostile and radical attitude of those who oppose his rule provide no added value. All right. Well, he also said that sanctions imposed by ECOWAS were illegal, unfair, inhumane, and unprecedented. Nigeria already cut power to Niger, cut off power supply to Niger in a bid to force the military to restore democratic rule. The question now is, what is next, really? Borders have been closed, but there are other ways. Niger and Algeria, they seem to, and other places where coup has taken place. Guinea, is it?
No, Guinea,
Conakry.
Mali.
Guinea, Mali, they all seem to have come together. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think we are ready for confrontation? And like he has said, he has described this as an interference in their local
internal affairs.
Yes, internal affairs.
And that's what it is. No, it's their business. Nobody has the right to. Well, I found it a little funny when you talked about Nigeria cutting off power supply to
because Nigeria supplies 75%
of their power.
Of their power.
And there's a book. I think the title of the book is "Be Mindful of a Naked Man Who Wants to Dash You His Clothes." Nigeria has no power. We are suffering from shortage of power, and you're supplying somebody. So it's like a naked man cashing you his clothes. But that's, by the way, I quite agree with the Nigeria in general, that it's the internal affairs of Niger, and everybody else should stay off the matter. The thing is that when they say fire, when investigators will be watching out for those that are trying desperately, so concerned about putting up the fire, because most arsonists turn around to put up fire. And those days when thieves used to be beaten up in the streets of Enugu or Aba, we observed that most ardent, those that were that felt so bad about this stealing and were so involved in beating up the thief, they are thieves themselves. Okay, and so I think it's the guilt in them they are transferring to the thief. Okay, so in Nigeria we had a coup, a civilian coup. And because of that, our president is so restless about this coup in Niger, because coup is an illegitimate change of government, especially violently. So it can be not violent, it can be violent. What happened in Nigeria is a coup. So, but the West African countries lack the resources. Niger is not Gambia. There's been disruption of security in this Sahel region, especially since after the fall of Gaddafi. So there are a lot of trained soldiers that their soldiers are skilled in fighting, in wars. So they lack the resources, and I think they will lack the consensus and the political will to fight Niger. And if they get into Niger, they'll be bogged down, because Algeria is willing to help Niger. And this association of countries, the military dictatorship are also ganging up, ready to fight anybody who invades Niger. So let them stay off the problems of Niger and let them sort out their own problems. We had coups many times over the years, until Nigerians after Babangida and Abacha got tired of coups. Now, well, we don't have coups anymore, but we sorted it out in our own way. It was all our internal affairs. So let the people of Niger sort their problems out.
All right, then. You let the people of Niger sort their problems out. Now, there's a tweet that I just saw. I think it came out this morning by someone I follow on Twitter. Well, we may be able to put it up. In case we are not, so I'm just going to read it out to you. Now, this one says, breaking. This was sometime this morning, actually. It says, yes, the military junta in Niger Republic has cut off ties with Nigeria after the efforts of Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, to resolve the ongoing impasse failed. The functions of the extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassadors of the Republic of Niger to France, Nigeria, Togo, and the United States are terminated. Radio France International quoted one of the Coupists to have said on national television. Now, this is a quote from Radio France, of course. And there are also allegations that Russia reportedly has signed military agreements with 41 African countries. Now, Cyril, what do you make of this?
Well, I've been following what has been going on in Niger.
41.
The other day it was 40, maybe it has increased to 41, but I know it was 40. That
Putin, Russia has signed.
Yes, what Putin said during the African, the Russo-African conference in St. Petersburg last week, or 2 weeks ago, was last week. Yes, last Wednesday, last Thursday, was that he had agreements with 40 African countries, which of course America and the EU came out to say, don't believe him, it's not true. But I think that Nigeria cannot afford to fold its arms when this kind of thing is happening in Niger. And we can look at this matter from a very holistic point of view. In 1961, when Cuba had nuclear warheads on its soil. America said that was a declaration of war. America could have also said, it doesn't matter. I mean,
it mattered a lot. It mattered.
it mattered. Now, I think that the coup in Niger is a threat to Nigeria, because credible intelligence, and you can see it, credible intelligence states that what happened in Niger is going to spread. It happened in, like you are right, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso. Let me give you Burkina Faso and Mali just as instances. The Malian government didn't want to sign a defense pact with Russia. After the coup took place, the military leaders, the junta that came on board, immediately signed the pact with Russia. In Burkina Faso, the young man that became president, as soon as the coup took place, people came out to protest, waving Russian flags. And the next thing we saw was he publicly said that he was turning attention to Russia as his mainstay in foreign policy. And then he berated and denounced France, which is very uncharacteristic of French West Africa. Now it has come to Niger, where they've successfully ousted President Bazoum, Francophile, American ally, friend of the West, everything. He's been ousted. And the trajectory is that Niger won't be the last. Less than a week later, we saw that in Sierra Leone, there was an attempt, or the government said there was an attempt, but at least I know they've rounded up soldiers, high-ranking soldiers. So to sit back and imagine that none of this matters to Nigeria will not be correct. Now, for years, our military has, I honestly don't know how to describe our military right now. I do not think that we have the capacity and the ability to confront the Nigerian junta. But the fact is, Nigeria needs to, I personally am for military action. Okay. If anything, you need to go to Niger and make a point that Nigeria will not sit back while world powers, play volleyball over the affairs of our sub-regional bloc. One. Number two, that if you stage a coup in Niger, you are endangering Nigeria. It's clear. Anybody who understands international relations and how these things happen will easily tell you. Now, when you are an ally of a country, that is when you are even an ally. But when you are a client state or in a puppet regime of a bigger power, let me tell you, it is the bigger power that is holding sway in that country. Intelligence, trade agreements, defense, everything. Is Nigeria really? I thought our allies used to be America, because I know that as soon as the Nigerian coup took place, the American vice president called President Tinubu to assure him and give him guarantees that that they stood with us and that there was nothing to fear. If there was no threat, they wouldn't be doing this. The second point was, some days later, the Secretary of State Blinken also called on these same issues. In fact, he was the one who now told President Tinubu to say, strengthen your whatever, ECOWAS and so on. Now the point is, are we just going to sit back as observers? Or we are going to Niger to say, even if we can't push out the Pushists, you need to go and create a stalemate there, create a corridor, so that whatever began there will not spread. If you fail to do that, tomorrow it may be Ghana that falls. It may be the government that falls.
All right, then let's.
So why delay? Why delay? We may not have the ability, but it's what we need to do.
All right, so a time has been given. Let's see what happens.
In 2 days' time. After 2 days, yes.
Let's get your final thoughts. Tochukwu Izukama. Let's get your final thoughts.
And my final thoughts really is on Nigerian issue, not on Nigerian issues. Charity begins at home, so let's get our homes in order before worrying about Niger. Yeah. It's about the court and what is going on there. We have no choice but to respect the verdicts of the court, and we wish that the court would do the right thing and let justice be done and be seen to have been done. We know it doesn't take, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or have prophetic powers to know that the election of 2023 was stolen. Let they return the mandate to the owner of the mandate.
Whichever, whichever one of the two.
We know the owner of the mandate, so let the courts return the stolen mandate to its owner, period.
Okay. Cyril, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that a matter as sensitive, as serious as the Presidential Election Petitions Court is a matter that years to come, perhaps centuries to come, will remain celebrated and will remain a point of reference in the annals of our judiciary. The judges are on trial, the matter is on trial, the winner is on trial. How each person comes out of it will matter more than anything else. Let's bear that in mind.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We've been speaking with author and political affairs commentator Tochukwu Ezukama, and also a public affairs commentator, Cyril Abaku, who is also a VOP in-house analyst. Well, that's the show for today. On behalf of the crew, I am Moses Humphrey saying have a beautiful day. Bye for now.